Hello, intrepid coders. We're here taking a look at an old video of mine released in 2019. I've been coding for, I think a year or two by that point, and I was really excited about algorithms and things like that, and I had this mini series that I want to actually redo and, rebirth it, if you will. And it's the Whiteboard Wednesday series is a lot of fun, and I actually got asked a lot of questions in our Discord channel from recent alumni, current students, or just, vagrants that came into our Discord server to ask coding questions. I say that in jest, mostly. It was a great little series, and I loved answering these kind of algorithms and data structures, and it taught me a lot about coding, and not building apps, but a lot about just manipulating objects and arrays and dates and things like that. But anyway, all that crap aside, this Whiteboard Wednesday was a fun one because we got asked it in our Discord, and it was basically taking an array of numbers and converting them to the correct telephone string. My solution was kind of hacky and not my favorite. I mean, people in our Discord came up with more clever solutions than myself at the time, and looking back, I'm like, ugh, I could do it way better now. But we got asked an interesting comment down here from a new subscriber. Say that damn Rob. So shout outs for a great question from this individual here. It says, "Hi Lou, great video first off. I've been looking forward to work. Try to use JavaScript or regex to format an input field, return a phone number in the specific format, parentheses, dashes, no spaces. However, the kicker is in the input field isn't from an existing form. The form has access to use a custom JS sheet and or regex field. I'm fairly new to front-end dev, and this would be a great feeling to solve this problem." So, it was made a couple days ago. I mean, almost over a week ago, actually. So hopefully you've been finding solutions and answers to what you're looking for. But if not, here is my take on what you could or could not do. I don't know what framework you might be working with. You said you had access to a JS file or script tag, if you will, that could affect a form. So we're going to assume that you have, again, this is very, very simple as a demonstration, but the concepts here will hopefully be able to help that individual that asked that comment and other people that might stumble upon this as well. And this is a fun follow-up to something I made years ago. So I have a form pre-built, and it has a simple input with type equals tell on it. Even if that's not on there, that's okay with these couple of solutions I have here. And we have a submit button to submit the form if we need to. I have my style sheet linked. If you have access to styling stuff, don't forget you could always just transfer this into just JavaScript code as well. Everything you can do in a style sheet can be applied as an inline style onto elements. And I'm assuming this is your blank script that you're allowed to add to customize the form. So the first thing I will say is that there's a concept in development called massaging values, meaning as a person or individual types out values in a field, if you are programmatically setting values in that field as a user types, then, well, what ends up happening is for example, the value of the input being assigned, something if I had it selected, we can run a hey document. We're going to go and try and find our input there. I'll say query selector because I'm looking for, my only input. If you're out there watching this commenter, then hopefully you have some selectors or IDs or class names that you can select by. But in my case, I have one input on the page, so I can just run a query selector to get the singular input that's on my document. So from there, if I do some kind of programmatic assignment, like if I say, hey, input value be assigned to the string value, LOL, when my fingers decide to work there. There we go. Right there. That assignment of value will actually bump my text cursor, or sometimes called my caret, C-A-R-E-T. I learned that term not too long ago. It'll actually bump your caret to the end of that input. So, I mean, I don't have any code saying it's going to reassign this back to LOL every single time. And, we can do that right quickly by simply saying, hey, input, I want to add an event listener to you. And let's say when I release my key, I wish to run the following function code. The following function code will simply do what I was saying, which is maybe take its current val. So current equals input.value. And then we're going to reassign input.value to be maybe current and some exclamation points or something like that. So every single time I type, it should just keep on adding stuff to it. So assignment to constant variable. Well, that's dumb, Luke. There we go. That should have been a let, not a const. Sorry, I'm so used to working with arrays and objects that I default to const until I need a let, and that's my personal pattern I kind of stick to right there. So whoopsie doodles. So as I type, I mean, that's fine and dandy the way it's working right now, where every time I type a number, it auto-completes 2 exclamation points, and the caret, or this blinking text cursor, is where it's supposed to be. But the shenanigans, or chicanery, if you will, comes in when I start trying to modify something in the middle. So from the YouTube commenter, this is why you don't want to what's called massage values as a user types them. As long as they're typing it correctly, it will always format that phone number the way you expect it to. But the second they go, oh, that 2 should have been something else, I'm going to delete that 2, and oh, well, I hit delete, the key releases, the function runs, it gets the current phone number, and attempts to format it, and when that programmatic assignment, this code right here, meaning from my JavaScript code, it assigns a new value to the input, meaning, oh, I'm going to format this person's phone number as I go. Well, what ends up happening every single time you do that is the caret jumps to the end position. So unless you want to deal with a bunch of text cursor position math, which I will look into if you're curious, but I didn't want to do it for this video, so I wanted to cover this topic here. You're way better off having a button or something akin to that that says verify that will then format that phone number once they're done typing, or maybe you have something called a debounce, which is a concept that says, hey, don't run this code until a user has stopped typing for X amount of seconds. Maybe you can have some kind of event that says, hey, wait half a second for them to stop typing before you hit the format and the caret jumps position. So I've actually dealt with this on forums before, and I never knew what its cause or explanation was, and this is something I learned as I dove into the subject to make this video for that YouTube comment, right? But again, I mean, if that is an okay user experience you're willing to deal with, your users might complain that that text thing jumping is quite annoying. I mean, it's annoying me right now. I'm trying to make a demo here. Stop it. It won't even let me delete anything with the way I had this code written. So, that positioning, that oh my goodness, refresh. This right here. So as I delete 2 and it reassigns back, text caret jumps back to the very end there. That is just default browser behavior. You're going to have to do some math to find out its previous position and move it back there to make sure that doesn't happen. But nevertheless, that doesn't really answer the question, which I thought was kind of funny that my answer to this question was like, don't do it. But, if you're going to have to do it, you have a couple options. Like you said, if you can actually alter, let's go ahead and remove, I'm going to leave the, what's it called? I'm going to leave the query selector. I'm going to leave both the query selector and the input event listener here just with no code running. You mentioned in the comment that if you had to deal with regex or something like that, which I personally am not that good with either, so don't stress about it. There's some cool things you could do with just the HTML if you wanted to. Like there is a max length property of say 14 if you're going to do like an international phone number in parentheses and things like that. You could always change this value. And yeah, again, I think you could do something down here in your code as well to say like, hey, I want to assign a max length. For example, if you cannot mess with the HTML in your particular project, YouTube commenter, then you could do something like this where you programmatically assign that attribute length from your script that you're allowed to add on there, right? So that's something you can take into consideration. But just from an HTML perspective, you can actually add something called a pattern attribute, which you hopefully have found out by this point, where we can type out some kind of regular expression pattern to try and match these things. Now, I'm quite bad at regular expressions. I'll typically just Google with Stack Overflow or like regex 101, I think is like a library page that I'll go and find particular regular expressions on, and I'll paste them into various websites to see like what their output matches and things like that. But I had a pattern at some point, and I might just copy and paste it because I'm not going to be trying to write this from memory. And I have some code pens I will link in the description as well as this video to make sure that you've seen these patterns. But like this one right here, I got from, let's see, what do I use? It's like regex 101, I think. Yeah, regex 101. No, not, well, I've used them to test them here, but there's one. What do I find like my regular expression library? Does it have them on regex 101 here as well? Yeah, you can find some here. Hold on, what website did I use? Dead air. I had a website like that I would link to people when they had questions on regular expressions, and I was like, better off just Googling your way to victory than asking me. CS Knowledge, regex 1, is this it? No? Wow, okay, well, the page I would go to, I guess, just no longer exists, or what is this? it was regexlib.com. This is one I've gotten this is where I've gotten a lot of regular expressions that I've used, like email registration routes and things like that I built on my servers. I'll grab regular expressions by finding them here, and then maybe even Googling other ones that are trying to solve a similar case and comparing them, heading back over to what I thought was my website, which is regex 101, and pasting them in here and putting my test string and making sure it matches the way I expect to, and then again, just console logging my way to victory, finding things here of maybe like phone number or something like that, and having this website bring out people's patterns and titles for their regular expressions for formatting, right? So let's see. I know, like, okay, 3, 3, 3, 4. So I mean, I know those are like the numbers of characters in parentheses and things like that. So US phone number doesn't get to see the first digit is legal 1 or 0, but all right, cool. But like the point here is you can find a pattern of some kind that will fit your need. You will then go and simply add it to this pattern attribute, and this does not format the phone number itself in the inputs. This is not a direct answer to your question, but at the very least, this will add some level of validation. Like if you have like a label that says enter your phone number in this format only. So if I do, for example, 123 space 123 space 1233 for my phone number, the browser will handle this validation for you, which again, at the end of the day, you should never trust the browser solely for validation. Your server, if you're coding it or if you have access to it at all, should have some validation on it as the final say of this is the valid format. But nevertheless, you can provide some basic pattern matching for your inputs. That way you can have a label or display saying, hey, enter your phone number in this format only, which again, that's not really answering your question because you're like, how do I let my users correctly do that? Or how do I like format it for my users and not have them write it in a certain fashion, because I think that's what your question was more aiming towards. But you can see there, that time when I clicked submit with the correct format, it actually did submit the form because it was a valid number. So if it's not a valid number, that pattern in regex, which again, you could also do from code by simply saying your selected input and then dot attribute name pattern and assign it this value directly from your code base if you can't edit the form from your HTML. But this right here will now be a valid number, which I can submit again. And again, this is one of potential several solutions you can employ, and I kind of call this the browser pattern solution, which you can also do from your code should you desire. But that's one way you can validate those numbers, even though it's not exactly, well, doing what you would think, which is formatting them the way you'd want. So if there's an easy route, there's a very, very easy route to actually solve this, should you have access and the ability to do this. If you can edit your HTML, or if you can even maybe do a loading a script from your script, like if you have access to an app.js for your form, and you could load a script from here. If you have a way to add scripts to the page, there's actually a very handy dandy library I found called IMaskJS that does this exactly. Masking is a concept where you put like a hidden input behind a visual input. The visual input is what your user sees and can be formatted, and then the input behind it, the hidden one, is actually tracking the data of what they're entering, because, you know, like if I was taking a phone number to one of my servers, I would just want the actual digits. I wouldn't care about if they're nicely formatted with spaces and hyphens, parentheses. I just want the digits. So maybe the input behind it, the one that's masked, hence the term mask, is collecting the set of numbers without any kind of formatting and modifications, and the one we're seeing, or the mask on top of our input, is the one that gets automatically formatted to look nice. And as you can see, they have a ton of options of formatting with regex and built-in things and dates and things like that. It's pretty freaking cool. I found it just because of that question from that YouTube video. And if you have the ability to add this, it's actually very, very simple. All we need to do is grab their script. Let's see if I can find it. So, you know, if you don't have the ability to install stuff via NPM, then don't stress about it. They have a CDN, or content delivery network, where you can grab their script. And I'm going to add it to my HTML page if you have the ability to do that. Otherwise, I think you can do it from your code without too much trouble. There we go. And now that it is in the scope of my body, meaning it's going to be loaded in the head of my HTML, so my body should have now access to it. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this pattern and max length while I'm messing with this. Now from code, this is actually going to be fairly easy. All I have to do is I now have access to something, I'm going to comment that out, called IMask. This is going to be a script added for me, thanks to this IMask script I'm adding up here. So IMask is a function. It will take whatever element we're trying to manipulate with a mask here. So I'm going to copy and paste my query selector for my input. Then it takes an options object, and this option object has several properties. The only one we really care about, though, is called mask, and this mask will take a string of the pattern that we want it to do for us. So I think your YouTube comment said you wanted parentheses, space, and hyphen with no spaces around it, and that honestly should be it. Let's go take a look at it. So looking back over here, if I start typing, 1, 2, 3, boo, yeah, and I mean, yeah, and it also applies like a, oops, I just clicked way too many buttons too fast. Uh-oh, all right. There we go. All right, so that does indeed take care of that issue. As you can see, I can mash my face or just roll across the keyboard and it formats it correctly. And as you can see, it even handles the cursor positioning for us, so we don't have that issue of the text caret jumping back every single time this is programmatically assigned as it formats. So this is going to be this is what I would do solution in your shoes if you can find a way to add that script into your code base somehow for the form. It will handle everything and so much more and allow you to add it to the rest of your inputs and give you the ability to do some really cool stuff. So that's going to be my go-to solution in this case, but if you don't mind that formatting thing here, let's see how we can actually handle that. So let's say I did not have access to IMaskJS. I simply had this little input right here in my code base, and that's all I really got going. Yeah, that's all I really got going here. How can we deal with our input? So what I can do is I can make that utility function. We can do something like function format number. It will take a value or number or phone number that we're trying to format. So we might as well call this format phone number to be a good specific function name. And we can say some basic stuff here. If there is no value being passed in, then none of this has to happen. So we're just going to run a return on this and say don't run anything. In the case that no value is passed in, there's nothing to format, so don't run anything, right? We can do this is called a shorthand return, meaning I don't need to have curly braces after my if statements in the event that they have one line of code. So this is a cool little like quick exit trick I do on a lot of my functions and things like that, especially in React. I do this a lot. But we need to make sure we strip any characters out of the phone number, so we can say the raw phone number is going to be whatever value and replace any and all characters. So for the regex here, I need to do one of these for global. Then I can do a set of those and match any characters. So what this regex does, from what I found, is that it will replace any character that's not a number, and it should replace it it just strips characters out of the field. That way, when it formats it, we don't have to worry about someone accidentally entering the letter E and attempting to format a phone number on the letter E, as that'll never work. So this is a regex pattern I found that helps us strip characters out and leave us with number values only. So we need to get the length of this number as well. So I'll say phone number length equals phone number dot length after it's been stripped of all characters. If that number, phone number length, is less than 4, then we can return the phone number unformatted, because, well, if it's less than 4, there's no reason to start even formatting anything yet. We can say if that phone number length is less than 7 but greater than 4, then what we're going to do is we're going to ask it to return the following. We're going to do a string value here, and this is like a shorthand from that Whiteboard Wednesday video. So we're going to say I need a set of parentheses. In the set of parentheses, I want the first 3 numbers of the phone number in parentheses. So phone number dot slice, that'll make a copy of the phone number and slices return copies of strings and arrays. So this will not modify the original input. This will simply make a copy of the numbers and say, give me from index 3 and up, or index 0, the first number, up to and not including index 3. So that'll be 0, 1, 2, which will be the first 3 numbers, which means they go inside a set of parentheses with this string interpolation. Then I'll want a space, and I'll want everything after the last set of numbers. So I'll say, give me the phone number, start slicing, starting from index 3 and all the way to the end. And so if I don't specify an ending point to slice, it will just continue to the end of the string. And voila, I've got to copy the first 3 numbers and a set of parentheses, space, and then everything else after that, just kind of trailing off. And finally, if it's greater than 4 and greater than 7, then this should just be the default answer down here, where we'll say, same as these right here. I want a set of parentheses where I want this value once again, just the first 3 numbers, no problem. No problem, inside a set of parentheses. Then a space, and I want this code here, except we're going to modify it slightly, because we want it to go from the next 3 set of numbers, so starting at index 3 and up to but not including 6, because don't forget we're strings and arrays in JavaScript start counting at 0, so that you always have to shift your math slightly. And this endpoint is non-inclusive, so it'll be 3, 4, 5, and then it stops at 6 and doesn't actually pick up 6 in this. And then we'll need a dash, and then we'll need to interpolate the last set of numbers, which, as you can imagine, will simply be everything after 6 and up to 9. So it'll be starting at position 6 and up to 9 for those last digits right there. 6, 7, and 8, right? That doesn't sound right, does it? 6, 7, 8. It should be the last 4 digits, so... Huh. Let's see what happens here, because that math is what I wrote before, and it seemed to work just fine. So let's see what happens. Maybe I'm just misunderstanding how my own number works. Either way, we have it selected. We have my formatting function here, and I'll simply say on this key up, I need to grab the event that is occurring during the key up, and after they release the key, that event will fire. That event will have a target, which will be the input here. So, again, you said you're fairly new to front-end development, so we can say e.target and simply console log that value. It represents the input. So if I daisy chain e.target.value, that represents what my user is typing into the input as they type it. So all I need to do is maybe take this value and even call format phone number and paste my e value in there so I can console log it. Let's check it out. Nothing happening. Aha. And yeah, we're missing a number, so that should have been 10, or I can even just say the last bit of numbers down there. So let's try that again. I figured that math seemed kind of odd for that kind of a phone number there, right? Yeah, all right, there we go. That's what needs to happen. Booyah, that's what I'm talking about. But again, like once I start changing things in the middle, it might get a little bit goofy. But then again, not actually assign the value yet, but check this out. So we know our console log is now giving us the correct value. So all I need to do is say maybe const formatted equals a call to format phone number with the user's typed in value. And then here's where it goes wrong. Just like before, if I programmatically assign this value to be my formatted value, then, well, you know what that means. As they type, all fine and dandy so far, blah, 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 blah. Oh, oops, I meant to do 405. And that programmatic assignment or massaging the input means that problem right there, where it will jump that caret back to the end position there, which is why, again, I recommended that IMask. So, yeah, that's how you actually want to do something like this. This is what I mean by you. This is not my favorite solution because it does mess with the user experiences. As I try and delete numbers, things get jumbled around pretty annoyingly, which is a bad user experience. But, if you're okay with that and you tell your users type it right the first time, that's another option as well. But like I said, my recommendation would do something like this, or maybe you have like, another button. We'll give it an ID so I can select it easy called verify. It'll say text verify, and when we click on it, it should also, I'm going to add type equals button here. Adding type equals button in a button inside of a form will make sure it doesn't submit the form. I don't want this to submit the form. I want this to simply be a button I can press that won't submit the form and refresh the page, for example. So right there, I will say const verify equals document dot query selector hashtag verify is the button I have there, and we can say verify.click. And when that click occurs, I would like it to run the following. Nope, that's jQuery, Luke. What are you doing? It's add event listener. And we'll say click. And when that button is clicked, and again, you said you're fairly new to front-end world, so I always like doing dumb small things like this where I test my functions and my functionality by giving myself dumb console logs to make sure I know what's going on here. So when that button is clicked, what I want it to do is find that input on the page and grab its value. So I can say input.value like that. And I can even say This should actually work. I mean, in JavaScript, I'm going to comment out this event listener. In JavaScript, you have to remember that the right-hand side will be evaluated first of assignments. So it's going to take the current input value, format it, return the new value, and then this should reassign that value afterwards. So let's go and see if that works here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, verify. 1, 2, 3, 3, verify. And that's something that I would recommend doing, right? Something almost asynchronous, something that doesn't happen as the user types, but they will click the verify button to make sure it's in the proper format and everything looks correct. And that's my personal recommendation on this solution here. Now, in the interest of time, it's not even 30 minutes yet. Well, in the interest of time, there is something else you could take into consideration, but it'll be a lot more work, and I don't have the CSS that will make it scale correctly because I'm terrible at designing. But there is one more potential solution that we can goof with, and there's no way I'm going to remember how to write it from scratch, but basically the idea is kind of like making our own mask, if you will, where, I'm going to just link this code pen in the description of this video, and you can look at my CSS, my HTML, and my JS to achieve this. But just taking a look at what I got going on here. Oh boy. All right. So let's take a look at my input right here, right? It's actually, right? So you see like 3 different placeholders, and I wish I could zoom in more, but it's like not zooming in the way I want. There we go. So you see my parentheses set and my hyphen, and some placeholders are already in this input, and this looks like a little goofy form with a goofy looking input. And if I click on it, here, it looks like this input is now focused. When you click on an input and you see it kind of highlight like that, that's called a focus event. When you click off it, that's called blurring, if you didn't know that as a new front-end dev. Well, I can type into this input my area code, and then it will jump the caret to the next bit, type those in, and then type the next 4 in, and voila. And you're like, okay, well, that actually looks pretty cool. Just have the formatting placed there, and all I have to do is input the numbers as the user types them. And would you look at that? They can delete things in the middle, and it jumps to the end still, but that's okay. It doesn't jump to the end until they are actually done typing, as you can see. So how is this solution any different from that IMask? Well, the IMask is just one input with an input in front of it to format and make things look nice. My code here is actually a lot more cheesy than that. I might actually consider pasting this back into my document here just so you can see what this looks like. Bit more readable from my index HTML instead of the CodePen site. So let's go ahead and paste the form here. Hey. So, what is actually happening in this mess? I have a span that I have styled to make it look like an input. So when I click on one of these things here, this is actually a span that is getting this highlighted style so it looks like an input. And then from there, all 3 of my positions are actually smaller, mini hidden inputs where I styled by removing their outline and making them almost blend into a singular input, like in this example here. So this is one input, this is another input, this is a third input, and they are all styled together to make it look like they're hidden, but in actuality they are 3 small inputs. This input is inside a set of parentheses, so you can actually see the value there. This input is for after the area code from parentheses and the next 3 numbers, and then the final input is for the last 4 numbers, right? If you're wondering how the text caret jumps between them, I just have some basic code that does that. I select all 3 inputs, and then I say, have a key up event on input 1, that when an input 1 hits a length of 3 with eTarget value, I trigger a focus, which is again that focusing on that event where it moves the caret position there and will highlight the input if it has a style on it. And I have it simply say, focus the next one when a user finishes typing the first 3. This is not the best way to do it, but I mean, this is something you can take into consideration, right? So type in these next 3 numbers, and then voila, it jumps the caret to the next input there. And then if you had a submit button, you would have to read the values of all 3 inputs. So I have to say input 1.value plus input 2.value plus input 3.value. Simply concatenate the 3 values together, and you have your phone number ready to submit after that. So these are some fun and goofy solutions. Again, like I'll link these in the code pens. I'll link the 4 code pens that I've written for these for my solutions here beneath this video description, so you can check them out and hopefully you learn something new along the way. And if you have a follow-up question, drop it on the new video and I'll do another weird deep dive and some more goofy solutions to help teach you something and yeah, have some fun with them. So yeah, ta-ta for now.